Hi everyone and welcome. And we've got a special series lined up here because one of my favorite games to play for parties are quiz games, getting everyone involved. You don't need people with experience playing video games, they can just join in on the quiz, answer the questions, and score some points. So in this series, we're going to talk about how to make a quiz game, especially a multiplayer one, that you can use and create for your friends. So let's go ahead and jump in and talk about how this actually is set up and how we work it out. Okay, so I've got a blank project, completely blank project. And as you would imagine with the quiz game, a lot of it is going to be UI centric. Okay, so let's talk about the quiz in general. How does the quiz actually work? So the quiz is going to be a series of questions at multiple choice, and these are going to come from different pools or categories of questions, which are going to be randomized and given out to the players. So let's start off with how the quiz pool of questions actually works, and let's try and put some together. So in our content folder, we're going to create a new folder here for quiz questions, and we're going to open this up. And this is actually going to have a data asset. So we're going to need a blueprint class, and we'll do data asset, and we'll choose a primary data asset. And this is going to be a DA question. And the question is going to have a few variables in it. The first question variable is going to be the actual question itself. So question. And that'd be a text value. And then we're going to have our answers. And so we can do multiple choices, multiple choice. And this is going to be text again, but it could be an array. And we're going to have a final variable, which is going to be the correct answer. And this is going to be an integer referring to the index of that array, which is the correct one. It'll be a single variable like that. Okay, so this is all you really need. You need a question, the multiple choice options, and the correct answer. Compile, save that. Next up, we want to have the categories. So we're going to create another data asset, primary data asset, DA category. And the category, we're going to have the name for the category, which would be a text value. And then we're going to have the question pool. So question pool is essentially an array of all the questions that we could possibly have in here. So DA question. And we make that an array. Okay, and that's all we really need to do in here. So leave that like that. Okay, so we've got our question and category set up. Now, let's talk about how we actually set up the questions then. So in here, I'm going to create a new folder for the different categories we're going to have in here. So let's do one for history. And I'm going to create inside here a data asset for the question. And this will be the different questions I may have for history. So I'm going to do a code for this. I'm going to do his for history, and then do -01. So history question 1, essentially. And so I'm going to go in here, and now I can put in the question and the variable, the various answers that could possibly be up there. So what I'm actually going to do is to make use of AI as a tool. Is I'm actually going to make use of our ChatGPT. So in ChatGPT, we're going to do we're going to have a give me a multiple choice question about history. Okay, so there we go. Which event marked the start of World War One? Pretty good. So we're going to put that into our question here. So we'll put that in there, and we'll put in our various answers in here too. So we're going to have in here signing of a treaty, the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, and finally the invasion of Poland. Okay, and the correct answer in this is going to be index 2. You didn't know that about history. The assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand is what caused the start of World War One. So there is our question. That's basically what you do. You set them all up. And we can just go through ChatGPT if we want and just keep going through different questions. Here's another one. Okay. So now we can go ahead and put that in another question. And because I've labeled it 01, when I duplicate it, it's going to automatically increment the number. So it makes it a little bit easier to rename them. So now going to history 02 and just copy that information across. And we can now do various things in here. The Romans, the Greeks, the Egyptians, and the Mayans. Okay. And again, the question with what answer is that appears with Giza is the Egyptians. So again, that's index 2. Okay. So you go through that. And now what we'll do later on is we'll randomize the answers as well. So we can get that answer out of the list and we can make it randomized each time. So when people play the game, they don't have to just remember whether it's A, B, C, D. So you just go through that to make all the different questions you're going to have in here. Okay. And I'm doing a data asset. You could do it as a data table if you like. Totally up to you. But we've done it as a data asset in this case. So once we've done the history, we want to do the category for history. So we're going to do miscellaneous, data asset, DA category, and we'll do category underscore history. And inside here, we can just name it history and put in our question pool what questions are going to be in here. And you just keep filling that all out. That will probably be the longest part of this game's development, is creating all the various questions. Obviously, the more you have, the more variety you have, the better the game will be. So in our content drawer, we're going to go into our drawer and add a new folder here for UI. And in the UI, we're going to have the overall HUD of the game. So we're going to go to widget blueprint and we'll call this W game. Okay. And in the game HUD, you're going to have various options in here. The first thing we're going to have in here is a widget blueprint for the question. So let's do question. And the question will also have another one inside of that, which could be the answers. Okay, so let's go into the question first of all. So the question is simply just going to be a border. I'm going to put in there. And we'll design a border as such. We're going to go to the brush color and we'll just change it to something different. And let's go for more that sort of color. We'll drag it up there as well so we can make things match. Actually, I won't do that. We'll make it a bit more muted. There you go. Ooh. There you go. Okay, so that's our border. Next, we're going to go to the brush over here and do draw as rounded box. And I'm going to change the draw as here, rounded box here, details and the outline settings to rounding type, the fixed radius option. And we'll do a corner radii of 35, 35, 35, 35. Let's just nicely round out the corners for us. And let's put in the outline here. We'll make it white. Change the alpha here and give it a width of 10. Yeah, got happy with that. Next, we need some text in here. So let's bring in our text, bring that in there. And we'll make sure that when we're using the outline that we add padding enough to not have the outline overlap with the text. So we're going to go to padding over here and just add some padding to this. I'm going to do 30. And we'll make that variable and rename it because we're good game developers. That's what we do. We name things properly. And there's our question. Now, it won't be obviously this size in the end. This will be set to fill screen over here, and design on screen will push it right down. But essentially, that's what we have there. Now, you may want to do other things on it too, to like say, okay, I want it to display like the type of category it's in or what we're doing as well. And we can do that too, if we wanted to. So if I go ahead and put on that border, we can, inside that text, sorry, we're going to right click on text, wrap with overlay. And the text here, I want it to fill up the whole entire screen just fine. And the overlay though, I'm going to put an image in. And the image I'm going to put to the right hand side here. And we'll make it stretch out the whole side there. Actually, I'll make it a center in the vertical there, actually. There we go. And I'm going to put a little icon. I'm going to make a little, like, fun little icon for it. So I'm going to go into font, free icon. And search, such called flat icon. And let's search for the word history. And let's see what we've got in here that we can make use for history. I don't know how history is usually depicted. Probably like a cart, maybe a castle type thing. Or Roman. Let's type in something Roman. Yeah, something like this would be quite good, I think. So I'll do that. I'm going to pick maybe the black and white one. Yeah. And download that there. And I'm going to go and make a new folder in here for the textures. And bring that in there. Okay. So there, we're going to make a material. And we'll call this one M category icon. Yep. And put that in its own little folder as well. Keep it a bit more organized. There we go. And because it's going to be a UI material, I want to change the type that this is using. So you change the type of material by clicking on the main node here and going to material domain and changing it to UI material. And we're bringing a texture. Now we've only got one at the moment, but we're going to assume that we're going to have more for the other categories later. I'm going to drag that in, and I want to use this as my final color. Now I just want to make sure that this is white the whole entire time. So even though it's a black image, I need to flip it. So I'm going to take the R value here and do 1 minus and bring it to the final color. Now you're going to see here it's going to give us a big white square. The reason being is that this has actually got a mask on it. It's a PNG. So I need this to be masked too. So let's go change the blend mode here to masked. Actually, I'm going to change it to translucent. The reason why I want to change it to translucent is because if I want to change the render opacity of it in the widget, it needs to be translucent to be able to do that. Mask is either off or on. It can't do in-betweens. So opacity gives us a bit more freedom there. And then with opacity, I'm going to plug in the alpha there, like that. Okay. There is that image. Now, the reason why I'm leaving it white is because then it's a lot easier to manipulate its tint inside of the widget. That's a good idea to do this. Now, also in here, because we want to use this for other categories, it's a good idea to change the texture to be a parameter. So convert to parameter, and we'll call it icon, and apply that. Okay, so if we go back to that material, there's a category icon. I'm going to create a material instance of this, and we'll do cat icon history. Okay, and there is our history one. And we can do other for different categories there too. Now, how do we know what category we're in and what value we're going to show here? Well, we're going to worry about that later when we do category selection. But first, we just want to see what it looks like on here. So I'm going to go back to my question over here and click on the image I've added. Go to the brush, and I want to add that cat icon history to the image there. And you see it's going to pop up down here. Image size is going to be quite small by default. I want to make it a bit bigger to the size of maybe the text block here. So I want that to be probably, let's say 128 by 128. Let's go a little bit bigger. Let's go 256 by 256. I'm just trying to find a nice style for it, basically. And what I'm thinking wise, actually, is if I do a custom on screen here, and we can play about with different sizes for this. If I change the height of this to, let's say, 250. No, let's do 200. No. And the width here will do 1000. Okay, so it's obviously stretched, so let's bring it down to 128 by 128. That's a bit better. But I want it to be a bit more stylistic. So what I'm going to do down here is change the opacity of this to 0.3. Pretty good there. And maybe 0.2, actually, to bring it down a bit more. 0.1. Yeah, like that. But again, stylistically, what I'm thinking of doing is I'm going to go to the render transform, and I'm going to scale it up by 2. Now it's going to overlap the edges here. That's totally fine. Because what I want to do is I want it to cut it off at the border. So on the border, click the border. You're going to see an option for clipping. Change that to clip to bounds. And you'll see it'll cut off the edges of where our image is overlapping there. Okay. And what I'm going to do with that image is I'm just going to rotate it and move it around a little bit more stylistic. So we're going to do something like this. Move it a bit more to the right here. Yeah, kind of like that. That's pretty nice. Okay, and let's make that variable. Name it image category icon. There we are. Okay, with the question here, we'll leave it like that, I think. But you can also change the font, alignment, whatever it may be in that too. Okay, so let's close the question and let's go to the answer. So the answer is actually going to be very, very similar to the question. So I'm going to copy a lot of what we've done in the question over to the answer because stylistic, I want to keep it sort of similar. So I'm just going to copy all of it first of all. Go to the answer, paste it in. In this case, I don't want the icon. Click that. The text block I do want in because that's not going to be a question. That's going to be the answer, possible answer. So that would be answer. But in here, I want to make it easy for players to identify like if it's A, B, C, or D, basically. So we're going to go ahead and wrap the text here with a horizontal box. Okay, and we're going to put in another text block there. And for now, just type in letter A dot. And I'm just going to put in answer index as the name of it. Like so. Okay, so if I do desired or custom screen, we'll do that there. That width there, we'll say 100. And we'll say 200 in height. Maybe, no, 100 and, yeah, 100 in height. Yeah, that'd be fine. Okay, there we go. So now let's see if we can start putting this together and compiling it and seeing how it looks composed with the question and all the answers together. But before we do that, we want to make this actually editable. So what I'm going to do is going to go into the graph here. And I want to know what is the index for the child that this is in. So if I make a variable in here, it's very simple. There's only 4 of them. I can just hand code it in. It's pretty simple. We'll do index. We'll call that'd be text. Make that editable. And on a pre-construct, we're going to take the answer index, set text, plug that in to there, and we'll set a default of index here to A. Okay, now let's go back to the game HUD here. Now the game HUD is going to consist of different sort of pages to it. It's going to have like the calorie selection, the question, and other pages like welcoming the guests and so on. So what we're going to do in here is have a widget switcher to handle switching between the different types of screens. So the widget switcher, and then I want to put in the question screen. So the question screen, we're going to have in here a canvas panel. And but actually, let's make this its own thing. Actually, let's go ahead and do that. Let's go into user interface, widget blueprint, and do question screen. Where possible, break things up, makes your life a lot easier. So yeah, in here, we're going to do canvas panel. And at the bottom of the screen here, we're going to have a vertical box. And we'll size that to be 1000 in the X. The Y will do 500 for now. And I'm going to put that in the anchor at the bottom here. So if I hold down Control and Shift and click the button, it'll move it down. We're going to add in the question. There it is. And then we're going to add in the answers. And the answers are going to be in a grid format. So we're going to do grid, uniform grid. And we're going to do answer. And we can plug those into there. So one there, one there, one there, one there. Okay. I'm actually going to reorganize that a little bit. So it's 1, A, B, C, D. Yeah. So to get it looking half decent, the grid panel here, we need to make sure that the contents of this actually slide and fill out the whole entire space. Okay. So I want to make sure I hit fill on the size box over here. And then on the individual spaces here, I'm going to make sure that they are set to fill horizontally and vertically as well. So I'll set all my answers and fill. Okay. Next, I want to do is add a little padding in between them. So I'm going to go down to padding, and I'm going to do bottom padding. Actually, let's do these top two. Do top padding here of, say, 20, and bottom padding of 10. And the bottom two here, we'll do top padding of 10. Yeah, it's looking a bit better. And then left and middle, do here, padding. We'll do the right 10 there. And here, the left, do 10 there. Okay. And on each of these, we can actually indicate what letter they are now. So it's B dot there, C dot there, D dot there. Okay. And it's a good idea to make sure these are in the right order, because we're going to use the indexes to match up with what we've got in the data asset. So A would be the first one, B would be the second one, third one would be C, fourth one would be D. So make sure they line up a bit there. And let's lift this off the bottom of the edge of the screen. We have the vertical box here, position Y, and do -50. Bring it up a bit there. Okay, not too bad. Okay, uniform grid panel. I might actually say to that one not to fill vertically there. I'm going to do like that. Why is that one looking wider than that one? Or am I tripping? It's because the padding at the bottom of this. So let's go to padding here. Bottom here, we'll do 20. Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. We like that. So go into there, question screen, and then go to the game HUD, and we're going to add that to our switcher here. Cool. So that is it statically built or blocked out. And normally when I'm building UI, that's what I'm going to do. Is I'll block it all out. But then later on, we'll put in functionality to make it more dynamic and flexible. So here's our block out for our UI. And at the moment, it's all completely static. We need this to change the content based upon what question is selected. So we're going to go to our question screen widget. And in the graph for this, we need a variable to know what question we're answering. So we're going to have question as a variable. And that's going to refer to the data asset for the question. And we'll make that editable and exposed on spawn for now. Make our life a bit easier. And I can get that question out. And we're going to do this on pre-construct so we can preview what it's going to look like a lot easier. So in here, I want to get the question. And the question needs to feed into the question widget. So click on the question widget and make it variable. And we want to go edit the question widget to make it so that that text block can be edited outside of this widget here. We do that in the graph. Once again, on the pre-construct, we want to make a function probably to handle this. We'll do set question. And in there, we're going to have... Actually, what we could do, we could just say, here is a data asset for the question. That'll make life a bit easier, wouldn't it? Data asset for the question. And we're going to drag that out, get the question itself, and set that to our text here. File, save. Go back to our question screen, go to the graph, and rather than doing this, I can just get rid of the value there. And with the question widget, I can just do the set question function that I've made. Like so. I only want that if the question is valid. So let's right click on that and make that a valid get. Okay. So if I go to my designer view and I set the question to history 1, which event marked the start of World War I? Which ancient civilization built the pyramids of Giza? Yeah. So that's going to work just fine. Next, we need to populate the answers from here. So as I mentioned in the last episode, you want to make sure that the answers are in the correct order here. So A is the first one in the list, B second, third, and fourth. Okay, it's very important that they're in the correct order here. And to make your life a little bit easier, I recommend renaming the slots here to account for what letter they are. So this is answer A. Answer B. Answer C. And answer D. Rename that one. That's a bit. There we go. Okay, so it makes it a bit easier for you to identify which is which. So we go back to our graph. Now in the graph here, I need to put those into an array. So, oh, I didn't make them editable. Let's make these all editable. Or variable rather. And there they are now in a list. Now I want these to be in an array. So we're going to drag out answer A. And we're going to do make array. And we're going to add the pins for that. And just put them all in the correct order. So A, B, C, D. And just promote that to a variable. And do answer array. Like that. Now, once we've got the answer array, we now need to set the various answers from the question data. Next, now we need to make a function on the answer widget to actually set the answer, possible answer. So let's go to a function on the W answer. Do set answer option. And in there, we need to know the question. So input DA question. And we also need to know the integer that has been given. Okay. Now the question has the answers that it could possibly be. So get what's it called? Option? What do I call it? Multiple choice. There you go. Get multiple choice. And from there, get a copy of that index. And now just set the text up within here. So text answer, set text to that value. Oh, there. Now we've got that function set up. We're going to go back to our question screen and do a for each loop on our array. From the array element, we're going to do set answer option. Question is going to be our question data asset. And the index is come from the array index here. And that's it. So now if I go to the designer view, you can see here which ancient civilization built the pyramids. It's going to now say the possible answers that it can possibly be. Change to the other one. It'll change there too. Now, as you can see, we are overlapping and getting cut off. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually change the font size to account for this and also make it so it wraps the text too. Let's go to the answers. And we're going to go to the answer A and answer B, the two answer text fields. Go to the fonts. Change the size of this down to maybe 24. And with the second bit, we want to make sure we set it to auto wrap. And we want to make sure also hitting the fill option, making sure it pushes it to the far right at least before it does the wrapping. So if I go back to the question screen, make sure it looks okay when you go to 2 lines. Yep, happy with that. Excellent. Okay, so that's all well and good. However, as I said, we want to give the option to randomize what is the correct answer and randomize the multiple choices around so they're not the same every single time. So at the moment, they don't do that. Every time I select it, it's going to be the same order every single time. So let's randomize it. So I'm going to go to the question screen. And here are the answers. Now, we're not randomizing this part. The part we want to randomize is actually the answers that are being set from the question. I'm going to drag out the question, get the multiple choices, and I'm going to shuffle that array. But the problem we have here is that we're reading from a read-only source and shuffling that array. So next time I read from it, it's not actually going to be shuffled. So what I need it to do is I need to store it as a variable in here, the question screen, and shuffle it there instead. So I'm going to take the multiple choice here, promote to variable, and put it in there like that. And I'm going to shuffle that array there. But this is right, we can write to this one, so therefore the multiple choice there is going to shuffle up. So in the for each loop, when it goes through set answer option, we want it to use this selection of multiple choice, not the one inside of the data asset here. So what I'm going to do here is actually, rather than sending the question across, let's actually send the actual option across. So we're going to take the get out of here, drag that across, and I can delete the question index. We don't really need to know these ones now. We can just go in there and do choice text. Call it. File, save that. Go back to our question screen. We can remove those elements there. And the choice text now, we can go to multiple choice, drag that out, get, copy of the array index, and put it into there. So now every time I select a question, it should randomize the answer around. So, for example, the signing of Treaty of Versailles is in A. If I set that one again, go back to that one. The assassination of Archduke Ferdinand has changed there too. Okay. To notice one thing I want to fix here is you see how this is 2 lines here because we've got 2-line answer. When I go to a 1-line answer, it changes the size of it, kind of distracting. All we can do there is change the grid panel here to fill and stretch out. It should remain the same now, both. Yeah. But as you notice, the answers get shuffled around all the time. There's one problem with that, is that when you shuffle it around, you're going to lose what is the correct answer easily. Because this bit's shuffled, but the correct answer is actually stored in the question. So how the hell do you know what the correct answer is? We've got a few ways you can do that. One is you can get a randomized stream and work that out from there. But the easiest way to do this is before you get a shuffle this up, take the question, get the correct answer, index, multiple choice this, and do get a copy, and get a copy of the correct answer, and store that there here, like so. Correct. Ooh, correct answer. So as it shuffles it around, it will still know, because it's hard coded, what the correct answer is actually going to be. So it gets shuffled around. And then on completed, to make your life a little bit easier, you may want to know which of the answers is actually the correct one. What we're going to do is we're going to find the answer, which one is actually holding the correct answer here. So, actually, no, that'd be fine. We can leave it like that. Correct answer there. Yeah, that'd be fine. So we're going to go to correct answer. That'd be fine. So what will happen at the end is the player will pick a answer, and then that will come through on here, the question screen, which will then check it against this correct answer here. If it matches it, great, they win. If that doesn't match, they lose. Okay, so we're not now referencing a single correct answer. We're now referencing the direct text for it here. Okay, and there we go. So now we've got this easy to read, easy to use quiz system. We can change the question to very easily and randomize at the output just as well. Okay. So here we are in our project again, and I'm going to go into my content drawer, and we'll make a game folder for this. And in here, I'm going to create a folder for the system. And the system is going to contain things like the game mode. So I'm going to do game mode quiz. And we also want to do things like controllers, things like that too. So let's do a player controller, PC quiz. And we can also do another one. We're going to make this multiplayer eventually. So we're going to do player state, and do PS quiz for the player state. And the player state is where we're going to store things like the points each player's earned, for example. And do that there. And we'll also do one for game state as well. It's pretty handy to have right now. May not need it, but we'll put it in anyway. So now I need to make my game mode use all these instead. So if we go to game mode, we're going to go over to the right hand side and change the game state to R1, the player controller to R1, the player state to R1, and in a default pawn class, we're going to have none. So I'm going to spawn any pawn. Compile and do that. Now I want the game to use that game mode, so I'm going to go to Edit, Project Settings, go to Maps and Modes, and change the default game mode to GM Quiz. Okay, so that'll handle that. On the PC quiz, the player controller, we're going to go inside of here, and we're going to do Show Mouse Cursor, and we're going to change the input mode of this to be UI only. So on my event graph, we're going to do Begin Play, and do Set Input Mode to UI only. Player controller will be set to self. Okay. Next up, we want it to display the quiz screen on the HUD. Now, to access the HUD, we need a HUD class and various other things like that. You could do it elsewhere, but we're going to do it in the HUD class. So each player controller gets to see this. So we go to Blueprint class and search for HUD. And do HUD quiz. And HUD quiz on begin play is going to create the widget for the game screen, the game HUD there. And we're going to promote that to variable, HUD, and add to viewport. Okay. Now, because we made our own HUD class, we do need to go back to our game mode and set the HUD class here to be R1 there. Okay. Okay, so next up, we want it to just start displaying stuff for us to click on and do things. But for that to work, we need to go into our game HUD and set that up. So let's go into our game HUD. So in the game HUD, I know originally I wanted to do this sort of switcher idea, but I think I'm going to change it up a little bit. So I'm going to delete this from here. and hit compile and save that there. And this will instead contain like each player's score and things like that. So this will just need a canvas panel, and I'll leave it blank for now. I'll come back to that in a minute. Next, we're going to go back to our HUD class over here. And in the HUD class, we're going to add a function to ask the question. Ask question. And the question it's going to ask is going to be the data asset. So DA question. There you go. And there's the question. And what we're going to do in here is we're going to do create widget. I'm going to choose the question screen. As it asks for which question we want, we can plug that into there. And because it's going to fill up the whole entire screen, we're just going to add to viewport. So before I do that, on return value here, promote to variable and do current question widget. And then add to viewport. Okay, so we've got the functionality all set up there. All we need to do now is make it so that the game will start asking these questions. And that's going to be handled by the game mode in being in control of it. Because it can be multiplayer eventually, the game mode needs to be the one that controls which question gets chosen and gets sent across to everyone else. So what we're going to do is going to go into the game mode. And in here, we're going to have the custom event. And this one is going to be ask question. But before we ask a question, we want to take the possible questions we want and shuffle them. So in here, we're going to do another custom event in here, begin category. And at the start of the category, well, first of all, we want to know what the category is. So let's go input here, DA category. Oh, I put in the wrong one. Begin category. There you go. Category. And in the category here, I want to store this as a promote to variable as a current category. And then I want to take the questions pool out of it, question pool. And I want to randomize or shuffle that up there. But again, like similar with the multiple choice questions, you can't really shuffle an array which belongs to a read-only object. So what we're going to do here is store that here as current question pool and shuffle that instead. Okay, there we go, shuffled. And then I want to ask a question. But to ask a question, I need to know what question number we're on. So we only answer a certain number of questions. So on the variables here, current question index, we'll do a integer. And we're going to do ask question, take the question pool, get the index from the question pool there. And now we've got the question in that we want to do. And the question we want to do is going to be sent across to all the players. So the problem you have with game mode is that the game mode is only available to the server, not all the players. So how do you actually do this? Well, we can access the player states to do this. And you can get that from the game state. So we're going to do get game state, get the player array. Then from the player array, we're going to go for each player and tell them to ask the question. And then from the array element, from the player array, we're going to get the player controller. From the player controller, we can get the HUD. From the HUD, we want to cast to our particular HUD. Cast to HUD quiz. Plug that into loop body. And on the HUD quiz here, we're going to do ask question. And the question pool, again, set to there. There. So back on the game mode for the quiz, on begin category, we want to call the ask question. So let's just do ask question there. And then to start things all off, we're going to do a post login event, which basically is like begin play sort of essentially for the game mode. Basically, when a player has connected, it will do this. And what we're going to do is just do begin category and choose our history category. So when I push play, you see it come up on the screen. Okay. And because it's randomizing and shuffling, what we should hopefully see is that everyone should get the same question too. And test this for multiplayer to make sure everyone gets the same question. There's a few things we need to do. First of all, the post login, we don't want it to just begin category every time someone will log in because we just don't want to do it once, okay, for the main server. So this will be a do once here. For now, that will happen there. But more importantly, it's not going to be automatically doing this. So this is just for us testing. This is temporary, okay? So temporary while we're testing things out. So in here, we're going to do a delay to wait for long enough for everyone to connect and be okay. In the real game, when it's finished, the players will be already connected before we even start the category. So don't worry about that. But in this case, we're not doing that bit yet. So temporarily, we've got this test set up. So in 3 seconds, it will do once, begin category, and off it goes. Now, when it goes through, that's going to go for all the player array and then tell the HUD to ask the question. Okay, so the problem we have at the moment is we want it to ask question for everyone in the game. Now, at the moment, we're accessing the HUD quiz element. HUD quiz element is strange in the sense that it does not have a network owner. Okay? It only exists on your local machine. Okay, so you can't access this from everywhere else, but you can access the player controller, which in turn can access the HUDs. So we need to put in the ask question function, essentially, in the player controller. So let's go to the player controller. And we're going to go ahead and make an event in here. Ask question. And in here, we're going to do get HUD. Cast to our HUD quiz. And take to ask question. You see here it's asking for what question. That's going to come in from the event. But more importantly, the event here needs to be set to replicate on owning client. So the client will get this command and they'll be told to tell their HUD to show the question correctly. So that'll show the question. If I go back to the game mode, well, rather than going to the HUD here, I'm going to delete that and delete that bit and get the player controller from the player states, cast to the player controller, and then go ask question and put that across to there. File, save, and now to test this out. Hopefully we'll see the server and client have the same question on the screen. And what's ancient civilization of the pyramids built? Giza. Okay, so now we can see they've got the same question. However, they do not have the exact same answers. The answers are the same, but in different orders. And that's because the shuffling part is happening on the UI side, and UI is only happening on the client. So we need to make that shuffle part happen outside of there, and make it more consistent for every other player in the game. So we're going to do that in the next part. So as I just said, on the question screen, we've got the shuffling happening for the multiple choice. But the shuffling here cannot happen here. It has to happen on the game mode. So let's put the game mode in and we'll go to ask a question here. When we ask the question, we want to know what are the answers going through into here. So ask question. Before that happens there, you want to get the question. And we want to get the multiple choice. Convert it to a variable. Current multiple choice. Put that in there. Like that. Ooh. And then we're going to shuffle it. So now the shuffling is happening on the server side. That goes across to the for each loop. So now when we ask a question, we need to send over also this multiple choice selection. So ask question here, we want to add onto this as an input, multiple choice. Set up the text array. And go back to my game mode, and I can set it in there. Current multiple choice. File, save. So that's going to go across to that. But we ain't doing anything with this yet, so we need to send that across. And here we've got the HUD quiz. We do HUD question. We also want to send over the multiple choice options. So I'm going to ask question here. We're going to do text array here. And we'll name this multiple choice. And we'll pass that through to our question screen widget. Let's go over to that. We've already got the multiple choice variable in here. So all we want to do is not shuffle it, not set it, and correct answer can be handled differently. So we're going to take that off there. And instead, I want to just have the multiple choice option here editable and exposed on spawn. So now if I go over back to the ask question on the HUD and refresh the node for question screen widget, we see multiple choice appear. Plug that in. Go back to the player controller, plug in the multiple choice there. And that's now all linked up from the game mode, shuffling it through to the player controller, through to the HUD, and showing on the HUD there. And the quiz screen is using that multiple choice down here to set up the array. So that now will link up and share the same order for the multiple choice. What about the correct answer? Well, we need to store the correct answer too. So we need to do something similar to what we've done here. We've done the correct answer, multiple choice, and getting that from there. But again, the game mode needs to look after that. You also don't want people to cheat, so you want the server to look after which one's the correct answer. So back to ask question. We want to get from here, get the correct answer. Multiple choice, we're going to get a copy of the correct answer and store it as a variable. It's important that this happens before the shuffle happens. Okay. So now our question screen doesn't need this bit either. We can actually delete the correct answer from here if we want. Okay, so now let's test that out and see that's working. So once again, I've got number of players set to 2, player listen server, new editor windows. So now we should see the correct question and the correct answer in the right order. So A is signing a treaty of Versailles, Versailles, Poland, Poland, Pearl Harbor, and Ferdinand. Excellent. So in our UI, we made our quiz and answers. And the answers are buttons, okay? So we need to lock in our answers with this button idea. So first of all, let's convert it to a button by right-clicking on our border, which is the top layer here. Right-click, wrap with button. And we're going to tell it to set the horizontal alignment and vertical alignment to fill the whole space. I'm going to get rid of all my padding. And I'm going to go to the button. And buttons have this extra padding setting that you may want to change and get rid of, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead to normal padding here, 0, press padding. I want to leave like that so it has a little dent when we push it. But I'm going to change my background color to have an alpha of 0. So completely see-through. Okay, so there's our button. I need to make it variable, and I'm going to name it answer button. Okay, let's now go over to the graph. Now, the main thing is with this button, we need to communicate back to the game mode, essentially, what our answer is going to be. Sending over who answered what. So let's go ahead and set up the button answer and click on the on-clicked button to create the event. And then we're going to go ahead and make an event dispatcher to help communicate back up the layer. Next up, we need to create the event dispatcher. This is so we can communicate back up the layers and set our answer. Now we can't do this directly on the answer button because we need it so we can only click on one answer at a time. If we click on a different answer, we don't want to be able to set a different answer for a different thing. We want to lock it down completely. So we're going to control of it from the parent. So we're going to do on answer selected. And we are going to give that the input here of the answer slot. And we're going to give it the type of the actual widget W answer. Like that. After compiling it, we can drag that out and call it and plug in self into our answer slot. So this answer slot's going to report back the answer slot that it is. So now let's come out of here and now go to the question itself, the question screen. And here's our question with the various answer boxes. So each of these boxes need to report back to this question screen and say which one we've selected. So we're going to go to the graph and set up those bindings. So over here, we've got the for each loop already working to set the answer option. Next, I want it to do is I want to drag out from the array element and I want to bind event to answer selected. I can now create an event from the event pin. That'll be linked up to that event dispatcher. So when I click on the button, this is going to call this event or function and lock it in essentially. So let's go ahead and create a matching event and do on answer selected. And with the answer slot being coming through here, I want to lock that in to who I answered it with. Okay. So I want to promote that to a variable and do locked in answer. And then I want to actually lock the screen from being editable. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take all my answer slots here and just change their visibility setting to be non-hit testable. That's an easy way of doing it. So we're going to take out our answer array for each, and we're going to set the visibility of each one to non-hit testable, self and all children. So now they won't even respond to mouse clicks. So the question screen is now looking after the answer, and it knows also which player done it because it is the player that the screen is being shown to, because you can't see anyone else's screen, so that's your one. So we're going to say take this answer here and send it up to the game mode, which will then be able to display it for everyone else to see. Okay, so let's send it up to the game mode as well. So let's go back to the game mode. And in fact, actually, let's go to the game state. That might be a better place to put it. Yeah, we'll do it in the game state. And the reason why I think it might be a better place to put it is because every player has access to the game state. So rather than replicating back and forth all the time from the game mode to all the owning clients, etc., I can just say to them, like, hey, look at the game state, look what everyone else has picked, and you can see each other's answers. So let's put it in here. And on the variables down here, I'm going to put an array of player states mapped to the answer they've given. So locked in answers. And the type for that will be the player state mapped to the text string. Okay. Like that. So now I want to send a function over to the game state from the client side of things. They'll do that. But more importantly, I want to tell the game mode to replicate this across. Now, the problem with replicating a map is that you can't easily do that. You can't just say, hey, replicate. Instead, we have to replicate the actual event of putting stuff into this thing and reading it out. So in our game state, we're going to have a custom event. It's going to be a multicast event. So we're going to do update locked in answers. And as we just said, we're going to make it multicast. So it executes on everyone. So everyone will get this update. And the update we're going to give them is which player state is doing it. And also what answer it is. So when it comes through, I'm going to take in my locked in answers, which is local only. And from there, we're going to do add and set up the add there. Now, one thing we're going to need later on, we're not going to do it right now, but one thing we do need is the ability to clear this. So we're going to do another multicast here. To clear locked in answers. So then we go to a new question. We can just clear out our map here using the clear function. Don't forget to make it replicated with multicast. File, save. Okay, good. Close that. Okay, so we select an answer. We're going to send it over to the question screen and we've locked it now things and locked it on here. Now we need to somehow communicate to the game state from the server side. Now, the best way of doing that is communicating from the player controller to game states or whatever you're trying to do. As the player controller is always going to be on the server side as well, and it has a direct ownership to the client, so it's a lot easier to communicate across. So we're going to go over to our player controller, and in here we're going to have a custom event, and we're going to do set answer. And the set answer is going to be called on our question screen once we've done this. So on completed here, once we've locked it all up, we want to get the player controller. And we're going to need to cast it to our particular controller. So let's cast to PC quiz. Put that into the completed there. So on PC quiz now, I can call that answer set function we made. But we also need to tell it what the actual answer was. So on set answer here, we're going to add an input. And we're going to go to text answer. You can see it there. And the answer comes from the locked in answer. It's called index, I think it was. Yep. There. Okay. So the set answer is going to be happening here. But I want this to only be happening to the server side. Okay. So let's go ahead and change it to replicate to run on server. Now, run on server will only work when you're calling from the owning client. So the question screen is owned by the client. So that's good. We can now call that from there and it will actually go on the server. So the server side of the player controller is now doing this, which means I can get access to the game state and update it there, which will then translate to everyone else. So get game state passed to my game state quiz. And over here, I want to do multicast update locked in answers. So I need the answer, which is straightforward. It comes from here, but the player state will belong to this player controller. So we're going to just right click and search for get player state and plug that into player state there. Oh, sorry, not this get player state. We want the other player state. This one. Okay. The reason being is that this player state index will always return the local player state, which we don't want. We want to get the player state that is replicated to this controller. So that's what we want there. Okay, now go across to the game state and update everyone with the answer. So to test this out, make sure we are getting the answer through to the game state. We're going to go to the game state. And I'm just going to do a little debug here with a print string, which is going to print out an append here. And we're going to do the player state's name, player name, into the A, put equals, and then add another pin, plug in the answer. It's just for debugging, so we can see that it's coming through and communicating just fine. We should see it hopefully get multicast across to everyone and see the update. So let's go ahead and test that out. Okay, so over here, this is the client. Oh, there you go. There you go. That's the client over there. And here's the server. So on the client side, I'm going to pick my answer. And you can see here, I've picked the correct answer and it come up with both. Everyone's get the same response. Okay, and back over here, the server side, we're going to click on this. And again, it gets replicated across player with their answer they chose. So a lot of the hard work is done already for us, as we did it in the last episode, as the game state is already replicating across who has picked what, which is perfect. That's what we want. So now we just need to do visuals for this. So let's go ahead and find our UI folder. And I'm going to create a new widget blueprint. And we will do, this is the player response. We'll do a very simple thing here. And what I'm going to do is a simple border. And the border is going to be, actually, we'll just wrap it with a size box as well. There we go. And let's give it 40 by 40. And then change it from field screen to designed on screen. We can see what it's going to look like. I think that might be okay. Might be a little bit bigger, but we'll try this out first. On the border, I'm going to make the draw as here as a rounded box, like so. And then I'm going to change outline settings over here. Give an outline setting of, say, 3, maybe. And we make this white. And then the background color, I'm going to make black for now. Okay. So with that done, what will eventually be here will be like the avatar for the player, so you can know who done what. But we'll worry about that later. The thing we want to do on here, though, is indicate the player state that's associated to this. So let's go to the graph and give it a variable, player state. And the type for this would be the player state for the quiz show. Now, I can't remember if I already made one. I did. Yep. Player state quiz. And we're going to make that editable and exposed on Spawn. Now, the reason why I'm choosing the specific quiz player state is conventionally that's where the avatar information can be stored. So, saving a step, I can just set it straightly on here. There we go. And we can now close that. So now we've got that, we're going to go over to the question screen. And which is this one. And what we're going to do is we're going to put that graphic already on our various buttons, the answers. However, we're not going to show them straight away. We're going to give it a timer to eventually reveal. But how do we actually do this? Well, first of all, we need somewhere to put the actual images. So on these slots for the answers, I'm going to add a new wrap box to it. Let's go edit the answer. And in this overlay we've got over here, I'm going to search for a wrap box. Throw that in there. In the wrap box here, I'm going to put on the bottom right of the screen here. So let's go to the alignment, right to the bottom. And I want to get a preview of what it looks like. So normally when I'm doing this, I'll put in preview stuff like this to help me visualize it. So let's put in the wrap box, the player response. There we go. Obviously, I don't want it to be way up there. So I'm going to just change the rendering of my wrap box to be lower. So I'm going to go down to translation in the wire and click and drag it down, up, sorry, and it'll move it down like that. Go 50. Okay, so now we've got the issue of it clipping. Easy enough to fix. We just go to our border. I think we got it on there. Yep, clipping. Change clip to bounds to be the default. It'll overlay it just fine for us. It's totally fine for us in this case because the question we're using clipping to clip that little image we made into it, but the answers don't have an image. So all a-okay for this. And obviously it's up to you how you show players picking options, but this is just a way of doing it. And because it's a wrap box, we can add marbles to it. And we may want to add some padding, I think, by the looks of it. So this is why it's good to like block out and plan what your UI is going to look like, because you can get an image of like what it's going to look like at the end. So I'm going to add a padding to your thing. So let's go back to the actual player response widget. And if I want to add a padding to the whole entire widget, I just click on the top of my hierarchy. You'll see padding over here. I'm going to give it a padding of 5. Go back to the answer. Select all of them. And now padding here will now be able to reset to default, which is 5. Now, it may preview wires look like this, and it shouldn't do it actually in the game because the wrap box can extend out. But what I'm going to do with the wrap box actually is just tell it to stretch out horizontally, like this. Okay, but because I wanted to pad in from the right-hand side here, I want to put in another wrap box or another thing inside of it to help push it along. So I'm going to go to the wrap box here, wrap it with a horizontal box, and going to put in a spacer before the wrap box in the horizontal box. And the spacer then can be set to fill, and it'll push it right to the edge there. Okay, so let's compile and save that. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So this wrap box here needs to be editable. So let's make that variable. I'll call it box player responses. And then I can empty the contents of it. Yeah. Okay, so now let's go back to the question screen. So each one of these now has that little hidden wrap box where we can put the player response. Let's go to the graph. And we now need to be able to communicate when the map has updated in the game state. So on the game state, I'm going to create an event dispatcher and do on response set or answer set. And rather than doing this print string, I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to call on answer set. And I want to give it the same stuff I was just giving the print string, basically. I want to give it the player state and the answer. So on answer set and input be the player state. And we'll name it. And then also the answer. Yeah. And I can plug in those two. So my question screen, we now need to bind to that game states event dispatcher. So let's go back up to, let's do it on a construct. Actually, we ain't made one of those yet. There's no point doing it on a pre-construct. No big difference. It's a good idea to separate the pre-construct stuff from the construct stuff, just for organizational sense. So anything that's dependent on stuff to be running in the game, like the game state, it may be better to put on a construct to separate it out a bit. But not a big difference either way. Or this need anyway. So get game state, cast to my game state quiz, and then create the binding by doing bind event to on answer set. There you go. And we're going to create an event. And we'll create a matching function, renaming it. So answer to received. Answer set. That's not right. So received, is it? There we go. Okay, so that's going to come across here. Now I need to create the widget. So create widget. Create the player response. It's going to ask for the player state. Now the player state won't match up because this is the generate player state. This is the player state for the quiz. So first of all, we need to cast it. PS quiz. So now we made it, we just don't know which answer to actually put it on. So we're gonna make a little function that's gonna be handy for us to have, which is get answer slot by index. And we're gonna have the input for that, which would be the index for the letter index that we're using. So index. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the answer array out, do a for each loop, and say to this one, get the answer, or index, sorry, on here, and whether or not it is equal exactly to the index there. If it is, great. That means we want to return that array element. So return node, return the array element. And we'll just call this one answer slot. That's it. Now, because this is a simple function that we're just getting information, not setting information, we'll make our life a bit easier and make it a pure one. This also makes sure we get the most up-to-date information as of and when we need it. So let's go to the received answers. I'm going to get my answer slot by index. Put the answer into the index there. And now for the answer slot here, I can add this widget to that stop box. So we're going to get the box for responses. Add child to wrap box. And we're going to add that asset there. Perfect. Now we want to get rid of the responses when they are starting a new question. So we make another function here, and we're going to do clear responses. Take our answer array, go for each one. And for each one, we're going to get the wrap box. Whoops. Let's get the box player responses, and I just want to clear the children from it. And this will get called right at the start when we start asking questions. So on the pre-construct over here, we're going to just put it on at the start here. We'll just do it here, clear responses. Okay. Okay. So at the moment, they're not going to be hidden. We just want to see these things pop up. So let's go ahead and test that out. So who built ancient civilization built the pyramids at Giza? We'll say Egyptians, and there's my response there. And I should see it on my side over here too. And if I picked a different one, let's say the Romans, we'll see update over here too. Okay. And you'll see that I can't click on it anymore on my side because we've changed that visibility, remember, to non-hit testable, meaning that I can't click on it. Okay. There's our responses. Perfect. So for the timers to be in sync is very difficult because of latency issues. So there will be a slight delay no matter what you try and do, even if it's just the slightest. But what we're going to do is we're going to go to the player controller, and over here we've got this ask question set up for owning client. When we begin asking the question, that's when we want to set up the timer. And the client's going to look after the timer, so they get the visual side of it. And then the server is going to handle the actual timer to check that everyone has finished their thing. So after we do ask question, we're going to do set timer by event. And we're going to set in a time here of 10 seconds, for example. And then promote that to a variable. We need it to be a variable because we want to show it on the UI later on. So we need some way to show that. Next is the event it's going to call. So we're going to drag that out and do create event. And we'll create a matching event here and do timer expired. And with this timer expired here, we want to replicate it. So if I go over to replicates, I want to replicate this on the server. So the server is going to get told by the client when they finish their timer. Okay. And then when that happens, we want the server to check that all of the controllers have finished their timers. So to do this, we're going to do get the game state. From the state, we're going to get the array of players, which gives us the player states that are there. We're going to for each them. And we are then going to take the array element here, and we want to get the controller. And we're going to cast to our PC quiz. So I want to check to see if the player controllers quiz timer is valid. So I'm going to drag that out, get the timer reference, and we're going to see if it is currently active. So active by handle. We're going to put that into a branch to handle whether or not it should break out of this early. Speaking of which, we're going to make this a function. So without the time expired, we're going to select the rest of it, not the red bit. We're going to right click and collapse that to a function. And we're going to do check timer status. And the server's then going to use this function to go through and check all the player controllers. If this is true and it's still active, I'm going to return out of this. And I want to return out of this and say return value, not input, sorry, output, return value of false. If it gets through the whole loop without ever hitting that, that means all the timers have completed successfully. So I'm going to put it on completed and tick it. Go back to my event graph. And I'll check timer status. Once that is returned there, we're going to put that into a branch. And if it's true, it means that everyone's finished and we can reveal the answers. So we're going to make another event on our player controller. And we're going to make this an owning client one. So a client. And this will be reveal answers. And this will be replicated to owning client. And call that on here. Okay. I want to move this up by near question. There you go. Okay, so when the timer expires, the server's going to check all of the controllers to see if they've all finished their timers. If they have, great. That means then the client will reveal the answers. When the client reveals answers, they need to access, similarly, what they've done in their HUD here. We want to get hold of and change the UI elements. So we're going to copy what we've done on ask question and copy the get HUD, cast a HUD quiz. Put that on here. And then from our HUD quiz, let's go over to here. We want to make a function in here to reveal answers. Go back to our player controller quiz, and then do reveal answers. Okay, next, reveal answers. This is actually going to edit the HUD here. So let's go over to our UI, the HUD. And we want the question screen. And in here, I just want to make it tie it to it so we can see like, hey, is it done? Yes. So what I'm going to do is on the graph is just do a binding to that. Or not even a binding, actually, just do a print string. Custom event, reveal answers. We'll just do a print string for now. Saying hello. So all that's left to do is go back to our HUD quiz, and on reveal answers, we'll get our question screen, and we'll do reveal answers. File, save. Let's go ahead and test that out. So what we'll see after 10 seconds is the print string happening in the top left corner, indicating that the timer has completed. There we go. So you may notice that hello is only saying it for the client, and that's because the client was the last one to finish. But also we need to tell everyone that we're finished. So in this client reveal answers, we need to have in here the loop going round and telling all the controllers to do this. So rather than doing only client, let's change it to multicast. Like that. Okay, so now on the question screen, let's, rather than having the hello and no visible timer, let's add a timer bar to this. So I'm going to put it right above here. So let's go for bar. Put that in there. And we'll change the stylings of this somewhat. So let's go to style, background image. We'll give that a rounded box in here. We'll get some padding as well. There you go. Yeah, and we'll give it, let's go for black. And the outline settings for this, we'll set to white, match what we've got over here. Width, we're going to go for 5. Oh, I forgot to, not 5 then, 1, 2, we'll do 2. Yeah, that'll do. So that's the background image. The fill image is slightly different, so that's filling up like so. As you can see, we don't want it to do this sort of square cut-off bit. So I'm going to go draw as rounded box for that as well. And give it the outline settings that it needs. I'm going to go and change the width here to match what we've got in the other one. And that'll push that forwards into the scene a little bit, into the widget a little bit. Okay. And I may bring that in a 2.5 maybe. Yeah, there we go. We'll do that. So that timer will fill up the bar like so. So to make that link up now to the player controller, we're going to set that default back down to 0. And go to the graph. And on the construct of this, where we're getting the game state and all that stuff, we need to get the player controller. So we're going to do get player controller. Pass to PC quiz. And from there, we want to get the timer. And we'll just promote it to variable just so we've got it. And then we need to update it all the time. So we can go to the tick event, get our timer, and we want to get the time remaining. And we also want to get time elapsed. The reason why is because you can't get a thing where, annoyingly, you can't just say get total time on timer that I started off with. So what we need to do is get the time remaining, time elapsed, add them together to work out what the maximum time was when it started. So let's add these together. And then we're going to do a normalized in range. Normalized range. Range. There you go. The range max will be our addition here, and the value is going to be our time remaining. So we can put that into the value there. And normalize the range here will now squash it down to make it fit our bar. So we're going to do the question timer. No, did I not do it as a bar? No, okay, did I not make it? Yep, not variable. There we go. Usually helps. Bar timer. And then that there. Set percent. Okay. So that will handle that. The revealing of the answers, we need to reveal what everyone answered on their answer sheet. So all we're going to do is we're going to change the visibility of the slot that we have on each of the answer slots. So let's go to the answers. And on the horizontal box I've got down here, spacing it across, One thing I noticed, by the way, with my player responses here is I want to set that up to fill the available space rather than rely on the spacer, because it gets a bit weird about it. But anyway, that'll do there. So yeah, we're going to do this as hidden. So we're going to go to horizontal box here, and actually we just leave the box player responses, it'll be fine. I'm going to change the visibility of this by default to hidden. Okay. And then on the question screen, to the graph, we want to get the answer array and do for each. Get the box player responses, set the visibility to not testable, self and all children. So let's take a look at that in action now. I think that's all that we needed to do. Okay. And the timer is not moving the bar. So let's figure out what's gone wrong there. So the bar wasn't going down, and the reason why that's the case is because the player controller is asking the question first. So it does this ask question, and then it does the timer setup to make the question timer valid. However, the question timer then is not valid by the time we ask a question. So what we need is for this to happen before this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to collapse what I've got here into a function and do start timer. And I'm going to put that at the start here. So that way, the question timer variable is valid by the time the UI gets added to the screen. So, yep, that'll go for that. There was one other thing I noticed too that I wanted to fix was the reveal answers wasn't happening for the server. And yeah, the issue for that is, as you can see here, on the get HUD. So get HUD is targeting the player controller of the self. Okay, so this player controller. We want to get the player's player controller, not the specific player controller. So with the target, you can drag out and do get player controller. And that will now handle it, ignoring the ownership of the player controller. It'll just do it to everyone. Okay, so that'll go through there. I also wanted to fix, I wanted the time to on reveal answers to hide the timer bar. So we'll get the bar timer and we'll set visibility of that. Complete here to hidden. Okay, now test it out. So now we can answer our questions and we should see the answers reveal themselves. There you go. Excellent. So as I mentioned, we already done the timer for our question screen. It was this bar that we've done in the last episode. So we already know the time that's happening here. All we need to capture is when the player has clicked. So we're going to go to the graph here and we're going to look for the on answer selected. Now, currently, this is getting out current locked in answer, changing it so we can't click on any others, and setting the answer in the player controller. Now, I've got a question timer. I'm going to store that as my player controller's answer time. So what I'm going to do is going to add a little value, float, to this set answer here to indicate what time they got set. So I'm going to go to set answer, open it up. And in here, we can see the answer is getting set and sent across over to our locked in answer for the game state. So we want to be doing that too. So what I'm going to do is on the set answer here is add an input to know what time is remaining. And I'm going to go to my MC update locked in answer. and add that to here as well. There we go. And what we're going to do in here is, alongside the locked in answer, we're also going to have another map, which is going to be the point value that they've got. So we're going to do player time, and that'll be a map of the player state, which is this here, player state, mapped to a float. So on here, we can drag out our get player times, add to the map the player state and the time they had remaining. So we're keeping track of what they answered and how quick they answered it. On there. So now let's go back ourselves up. So we went from the player controller into there. We're going to plug in our time remaining. And then we had the question screen accessing the player controller. So let's go back to the question screen. And now we've got to fill in our time remaining, which we have from our timer handle. I'm going to drag this out in the variable section, get it, and then from here we can get the time remaining. And I'm just going to plug that into there. So now I know, and the game state knows, who answered what and when. So let's go now back over to the game state for the quiz. Alongside the setting of our map, we also need to add it to the clearing of our map. So when we clear locked in answers, we're going to clear the player times as well. So let's do that. Clear. And the other thing we need to keep track of in our game state is also the actual player scores. So we're going to add another variable and call it player scores. And this is going to be the same. So it's going to be a player state with a float. So once the answers are all locked in, we then want to, when we reveal the answers, give the points to players. So what's going to happen is when the answer is revealed, we want the game state to work out who got the right answer and award them the points appropriately. So on our game state here, we're going to create a custom event. And this is going to be a server call. And it's going to be award points. Now, to be able to do this, it needs to know what the correct answer was. So we're going to put in input here, correct answer. And now I want to do a for each loop for each of the players in the game. So we're going to get the player array. And this is, again, a list of all the player states. We can do a for each loop for this. And for each one, we are going to cast this to our particular one. So PS quiz. And the reason why we're taking it like this is because we want to eventually tell the player, like, hey, not only did you like score points, but we actually need to tell them that they scored points so they can show it on the screen with whatever UI things you want it to have. But what we need to do in here is we're going to check if the locked in answer, I'm going to find the pin for PS quiz there. And if this matches the correct answer, that means I want to give them the points. So let's just promote that to a little variable for now. There we go. And then I'm going to take my correct answer, pair the two together with equal exactly. And we'll put that in there. Okay. So if it's true, we're giving points. So that's when I work out the player times. So we get in the player times. And then from there, I want to find the player state that we're looking for here, which is this one. And this time will be something between like 0 and 10. What I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply that by 10. And then add on 100. So you get 100 for the correct answer. And then you get a bonus based upon how quick you answered it. Like that. Now, this being a float, it has the chance of giving us decimal values. So we do want to truncate this and basically get rid of the decimal point afterwards. So we're going to take this value here and just round it to the nearest integer. Okay, and now I can store that in the player scores. So the player scores we've got down here. And actually, we'll change that from a float to an integer. Might as well. And on the player scores here, we want to add the points that they've got. However, we want to add it onto the existing points they have, because we don't want to replace them. We want to add on to them. So from the player scores, we need to find and add on the result. And the find is going to be the player PS quiz here. Drag that there. And we will tidy it up in a second, so don't fret. Plug that into true there. Okay, so this is a bit messy. Let's clean this up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, let's actually take all of this here. It's part of server award points event and collapse this to a function. Collapse to function. We'll call award points. And we'll expect this to be replicated. So replicates on server. And award points here works like this. So I can actually convert the correct answer here to a local variable instead, because we don't need it all the time. We just need it for this function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this. Yep. And we're going to promote the correct answer here to a local variable. Like that. And replace that over here. Like so. And we're also doing this, after this cast, we're doing a lot of lines coming out of the PS quiz, and we don't want that. We only want one line coming out of here. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag out and promote that to a local variable as well. Call it player state. Like that. And I now want to use it for everywhere else here. So it replaces all those lines with our own local variable. There we go. Okay, so that is our loop done. We do need to tell all the player states that they've just scored. So what I'm going to do is go to my PS quiz. Just find that. PS quiz. And in the player state quiz here, I'm going to create an event dispatcher on points awarded. And this needs to know how many points we're being awarded here. So let's add an integer here. Points. Like so. So if I go back to that game state, when I calculate the final points here, I'm going to take the player state reference and I'm going to call the points awarded. The points I'm going to add is the ones, not from there, sorry, from the round here. There we go. Because this is the new points we're adding. So we're saying like, hey, you've got these points, but this is a total. And apologies, one thing I need to do is change this. So at the moment, we're doing this multicast for locking in the answers. We want to do the same here because we don't want to be just server doing this. We want everyone to do this on their own game states. Reason being is because maps can't be replicated, but we want everyone to be able to know what everyone's score is. So on the award points here, I'm going to change that to a multicast. change to run multicast. And then back on the player controller, you'll see that this will be fine because the set answer is happening on the server anyway. So this will happen on the server, call the game state, and then multicast it to everyone. So to see this working, we are going to go to the PS quiz here. And on the class defaults, we're going to go on points awarded, which is the event dispatch we made here. We can just click on that, add the event for it. And we can put this on begin play. Okay. And what we do here, I'm going to do a print string to the points. So the last thing we need to do is we need to tell our game state when to do the award points. And that's going to happen on our question screen when we reveal the answers. So let's find where we're doing the reveal. So when we go to reveal our answers, at the end of completed, this is when we want to do the thing to give us the points. So in here, we're going to do server, and you'll see the node called isServer. It has to do this because we're using multicast functions, and therefore the server's the one that's got access to that, as well as the game mode as well. We need the server to be able to do this. So the server, and then I need to get the game state, pass to our game state on true. And in here, we need to award the points, multicast award points. And we just need to feed it the correct answer. And the correct answer is actually being stored on our game mode. So in our game mode, at start, before we shuffle it, we're storing down what is actually the correct answer. So that's what we want to grab here. Let's go back to that screen there. Get game mode. And because we're on the server, we can access it. We're going to cast to our GM quiz. And because we're always going to have this game mode, I can pretty safely say it's always going to cast. So I'm going to do a pure cast there. And from here, I can get the correct answer. Okay. Let's go ahead and test this out and see if that works. And which ancient civilization built the pyramids of Giza? That's the Egyptians. And at the end of the time, we should see a print string. We don't. So let's see how we can debug this. Oh, that down. So the main thing I want to do is make sure the answers are actually correct. So when I'm doing the award points for correct answer, I want to check to see if these are coming through correctly. So I'm going to add a breakpoint to my branch here and see if they are getting the correct answer and it's matching up with what the correct answer actually is. So let's go ahead and put the Egyptians. Okay. Here, do the breakpoint, and we're going to check each one's here. So that's got the answer D, and this is that one's got the actual wording of the answer. So I just need to change it so they will match. Okay, so technically they're correct, but they obviously don't match up. So what I'm thinking I'm doing is I'm going to change the locked-in answers to come through with the actual answer. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go to the event graph and look at where I'm setting the locked-in answer. It's coming from update locked-in answer. That'll be handling from the player controller, I think. Yep, set answer, which then comes from the question screen. And we'll go on answer selected here. Going along, get a locked-in answer and get an index from it. Okay, so that's where it's coming from, this index. So I need to change this. So the answer is these widgets. So let's take a look at that. And the variable they've got in here, got the index, great. But what I probably want to do is set the answer option here. Okay, so I'm going to put this choice text here as a variable. Like that. Instead. I then want to go back to the question screen. And rather than getting the index, we want to get the choice text. Instead. So if I compile that and take off that breakpoint that I put in earlier, which I've done in... Oh, I have taken it off. Good. We're going to push play and let's see if this works now. Again, we should see a print string of the values. We get it right. Egyptians. Nope. Okay. Let's see what else we got. Okay, so still not working. So let's figure out what else is going wrong. And I think the issue is to deal with our event dispatcher here. Now, event dispatcher in this case is being called by the server. However, event dispatchers can't be replicated. So what I need to do instead is on the player state is not worry about having an event dispatcher. So I can just get rid of that bit. And I'll delete the event dispatcher. Go back to my game state and you'll see it's giving us an error. We'll delete that. And on a player state here, I'm going to keep and call this on points awarded event. So on points awarded. And put like in the points there. And because it's the server that's doing this, I want to tell this event here to be replicated to the owning client. So they know what points they got. Okay. So let's do our test. Get the Egyptians. There we go. Yeah, points. So to display our characters and players' scores on the screen, we first of all need to have some sort of UI element that we can drag on and create. Now it's going to comprise of two different widgets. We're going to have the container part, and then we're also going to have the individual player scores. So let's create our user interface widget blueprint. And of course, on the player card. And we'll make another widget blueprint for player card box. Okay. So the box is just a container. Okay, so it's just going to be a vertical box. Like so. And the vertical box here is going to be variable. And we'll rename it box players. And we'll come back to this in a second. The next bit is we need to go into the player card and design how we want this to look. So very simply, we're going to put in some text for the player name. But then on the right of that, we're going to have their score. And we're going to display it in some sort of fancy way. We'll try our best anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap my text block here, first of all, with a horizontal box. So there we go. And then I want to have basically the same sort of style that I've got for the rest of the game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my answers over here. Take the border. I'm going to copy the brush. So copy that. Go to the here. And I want to add another border to this horizontal box. And on that border, I'm going to paste my brush like that. And I want this border here to fill the available space up. And it doesn't look like it's gone through with everything. Oh, did I not change the brush color? Hold on. Let's go back here. Yep, brush color is a separate thing. Copy that. Paste that there. There we go. So let's see how this looks when it's not fill up the whole entire screen. So I'm going to go to custom on screen here. And we'll give it a custom width of, say, 500. And we can see what we're going to look dealing with here. So I'm going to line these up. So this text here I'm going to make more centered. So on the details panel, bring down to the center on the alignment. And this will be the player's name. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm actually going to set this to fill space as well. So these will now take up the same amount of space, but I want to give the name a little bit more spacing available to it. So I'm going to give that box here 0.8 maybe. We can adjust it later on. But that'll go there. And inside that border, we want some text again. So I'm going to go ahead and put in more text. And that text there will again, we'll center a line in the middle and make it center justified. And this will be the score. So I'm going to make that variable, name it text score. This text here can be variable and named text name. And just so we don't get any weird clipping things, I'm going to tell my text name here to clip. Clip here. And change that to clip to bounds. Okay, so that when the text goes off the edges, it won't overlap the score. Okay. Next up, I'm going to give this whole thing a bit of padding. So I'm going to click on the root of the hierarchy. Go to padding. Put in 5, maybe 10. Something like that. File and save. So now we've got to get the information from the players. So the name, simple enough. I'm going to go to the graph, and this needs to be tied to a player state. Now, player states, remember, are replicated to everyone, so everyone can see the player states available to them. So that's not a problem. We're going to do player state. And we'll just call that one player state. Actually, I'll call it my other one PS quiz. There you go. And what we're going to do in here, we're going to make this editable and exposed on spawn. So when we edit in, we can set which player state belongs to this one. And then on the construct event, we can take the player state, get the name of the player. So get player name. It is. And I'm going to set that to a text name. So set text. Okay. Next is this thing is update whenever the score gets updated as well. And the score is set by the game state. So we're going to get game state. And then cast to our GS quiz. And I'm going to promote that to a variable because it could be quite handy to have. Never know. But what we need to do with the GS quiz here is we need a way of knowing when the scores have been updated. And the easiest way of doing that is with event dispatchers. So let's go back to the game state for the quiz. And over here, we've got the award points happening on the multicast. And what I'm going to do on here is I'm going to have an event dispatcher saying on points awarded. And we need to know how many points we're getting. We do new points and total points. So I'm going to drag that out once it's done. You can call that. If these don't say the names, just compile it and refresh the node. So heads up with that one. So new points is going to be the value coming in from the round there. And total points is going to come from the plus there. Okay. Hit compile. Now go back to our player card. And on a player card, on a game state quiz, we can bind event on points awarded. And we'll create an event for this. And we'll create a matching event on points awarded. Now I want to set the points score text value, set text to my total points. And let's set the default of that up with 0. Okay. So that's the individual player card. And obviously you can do whatever you want with it. If you've got avatars or you want to change colors, whatever you want. We're not going to worry about that in this series. But if you are interested in knowing more about UI and want to do more UI things, do let us know in the comments below. And we can work on some videos on how to do UI stuff like that. Anyway, so let's go back to the player card box. This is our vertical box, and we wanted to generate the player list here. So on the graph for this, on the construct, we're going to get the game state. From that, we're going to get the player array, which is a list of all our players, and then do a for each loop. And on the for each loop, I need to cast this first of all to our PS quiz. And from PS quiz here, I want to create the widget. So let's do create widget. And we're going to select our player card and plug in our PS quiz. That's creating a widget, not yet added yet. So let's add it to that box. So we've got the box here in the variables. If you don't see this here, it just means that you haven't ticked the box is variable. So make sure you've got that ticked. And then I can drag it out and use it. And in this case, I'm going to add a child to it. A child vertical box. And the child we'll be adding is our content we just made here. Plug that in there. Okay, and that's that done. So now it's a matter of where you want it to go. So we could do it on the question screen. However, I may want it on the screen at all times, irregardless of when the question is showing or not. So we'll be using our game HUD. So let's go to our game HUD. And in here, we're going to have our player card box. And I'm going to drag it in. I'm going to keep it to the top left. So I'm going to keep the anchor where it is. I'm going to resize it. And I think I'm going to go for about 450 and 300. And then just position it. So 50, 50. That'll do. So let's go ahead and push play. Okay, so it's not showing the HUD correctly. So let's take a look at why that's not working there. Got no error messages. So let's take a look where I've gone wrong. So we'll make sure the game HUD's being added first of all, which I think it is in the HUD class. So let's go back to the HUD class. Yep. So on begin play, it's being added to the screen. Totally fine. So that must mean the problem must be with the player card box. So let's go back to that. And got construct for each loop, game state, and so on. What I may do is rather than putting on the construct, is give it a bit of time for everyone to come in. So rather than construct here, I'm going to do a little delay as a tester for this and change that to 1 second. So after 1 second, hopefully everyone should be in and it should be okay to start doing that box. Still not showing. Okay. So now we're going to do some breakpoints. Let's figure out where this is going wrong. So on event construct, we're going to do for each loop, add breakpoint. Oh, not working. That might be that the game mode has not been set up correctly. Hold on. Let's go game mode. Oh, the HUD class is there. Okay. So what's happening here? HUD class, it's gone there. Okay, so after a bit of digging around, I found what I'd done wrong, and this is something you're going to have to correct as well if you've been following along. So what you need to do is go to your game state, and the game state is, we made it a child of the game state class. You actually want this to be a child of the game state base. So go to the event graph, not event graph, the class settings, and change that to game state base. Be pair on that. That will now cause the begin plays to function on our HUD class and other classes too. So if I hit play now, there you go, you can see it in the corner. Okay. So a few things. Notice how the client has both, but the server only has one. And that's because at the time of creation, the widget only recognized when one player was in the game. The server. Also, we need to fix out the font size, things like that. The black square, by the way, I did while debugging, so I'm going to take that off now as well. So let's take a look at how we do that. So let's go back to our player card box. And I'll take my game HUD as well. I'm going to get rid of that border. I don't really want it. There we go. So I need the player card box to update whenever a new player joins the game. Okay. So on the graph of this is doing a for each loop on the player array and building it up. So what I need to do before that happens, get rid of delay as well, I need to clear the box. So let's take the box out and do clear children and put that in there. Now the construct will fire this off, but we also want something else to fire this off, and that will be whenever it updates. So let's plug that in. But we'll put a sequence in there and put it into then one. And the other event we're going to have in here is a custom event to update list. And that also going to clear children. And all we've got to do in here is bind whenever a player joins the match to the update list. So let's go to our game mode and game state. So the game state here is going to keep track of that, but everyone knows the game state, but not everyone knows the game mode. So when the game mode detects a new person joins in, it's got to tell the game state, which will then tell everyone a new player has joined. So let's go ahead to the game state here, and we're going to do an event dispatcher for on player joined. And I'm going to create a function in here. Actually, not function. We'll create an event. Sorry, my bad. Event. And that'll be a multicast again. And we'll call it player joined. And this is all it's going to do is replicate to multicast and call our event dispatcher for player joined. In the game mode, you have a post login function. Okay. When this happens, this is when a new player joins the game. I want to get my game state and call that function. So we'll do get game state, cast to GS quiz. And from there, I'm going to do player joined, MC player joined. So as players join the match, it'll trigger that, which will then trigger the MC player joined, which will then in turn trigger the player card box to clear the children and get the new player array. So all that's left to do now is to bind the event dispatch we made in the game state onto that HUD. So we'll go to the player card box, and on then 0, I'm going to do get game state. And then from there, cast to our particular game state, GS quiz. And from that, we're going to bind an event on player joined. And that event will be the update list here. Okay, so let's check that out now. Should hopefully get to see 2 in each one. Yep. So all that's left is to just fix a bit of the graphics of this. So it looks a little bit nicer. I'm going to go to the player card here. Change the text block and text font here. Change the size down to 20. And the block here, I'm going to change the corner radii here down to 15, 15, 15, 15. And the width here, I'm going to change to like 5 as well. Okay, so let's see how that looks in game now. That's looking a lot better. Okay, and there's our 2 player scores. We go to Egyptians. And hopefully we see the points get added to a list. Yeah. Okay, so the first fix is since the last episode, the answers won't show up correctly for the player. So for example, which event marked the start of the World War I? Click on assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. And what we used to have was a little indicator indicating which player chose what. but that's not showing now. And the reason why it's not showing is because of this, which is handled inside of our question screen. And the question screen's problem is this get answer slot by index. And the reason why is because we changed how it reads the index values. So rather than taking the array elements index here, I want to get the choice text that's being used there instead. Compare the two. Now it'll be able to find the correct slot that matches what one you clicked on. So if I go on here again and click on the answer, wait for the timer to finish. Okay, there we go. The second problem you may notice already on the screen right now is the scores don't line up correctly. So, for example, the one on the left here's got 356 and the other one's got 316 for both, which isn't correct, obviously. So let's go ahead and fix that too. So the issue with that is our player cards are being signed to, let me just show you, this bind event on points awarded and the game state. So that's when it will update the points on the screen. But the problem with that is on the game state, call on points awarded is going to happen for every player state, regardless of knowing which player state it is updating. So what we want to do in here is pass through another input, which is which player state is having the new points added onto. So let's go ahead and we're going to go and add onto our on points awarded and add who it's been awarded to. So let's add the player state for this. So it'd be PS quiz, and we'll call that one player state. Refresh that node there, and the player state can go plugged in to there. Now, with that done there, we do have to go back to the player card and update the points awarded to also match that, because this will give us an error now. Okay, and that's because the signature of this, i.e. the amount of pins it has and what pins it are saying, doesn't match with the event dispatcher. So let's just add to that one player state and choose PS quiz. So now, before I update the text here, what I want to do is I want to update it only if the player state here matches the one that's been assigned to the card. So we do equals to player state from the variable list and put that into the branch. Okay, so now it should only do it if the player states match. So I've made the boxes a little bit bigger, so you can see it a bit clearer. So put in our answers here, and hopefully 282, 312, 282, 312. And more importantly, I want to check to make sure that the names match up too. So E5, E4, E5, E4 has 312, 312. Yeah, they match up perfectly. So with those fixes done, I now want to go in and just do a few little tweaks to the UI to make it a bit clearer to feedback to the player when they've selected an answer, and also when that answer is correct or incorrect. So let's start with the changing of the colors of the answers. So I'm going to go to the answer widget. There you go. And we can change the sort of color and opacity of the whole entire thing we want by changing this color opacity setting on the root of your hierarchy. So it's white currently, but if I change it to green, it'll go green. If I change it to red, it'll go red. Okay, so we want that to be used for what we're doing here. So I'm going to go to the graph here, and I'm going to have a custom event and call it reveal answer. And on reveal answer, I'm going to put in the answer that we're looking for. Okay, so I go to inputs, text, correct answer. And all we're saying is if this correct answer here matches with the answer that this has got on it, we're going to change the color accordingly. Ooh, let's do that as equals. Exactly. There you go. And I'm going to do select node And we'll do the white one. This is the wildcard one, so you can put in anything you like in here. And I'm just going to right click and do set color and opacity. Plug that in and plug in color and opacity into the return value here. Now I can set the colors I want. So if it's true and it matches, we're going to make it green. And if it's false, i.e. incorrect, we'll make it red. With that function now there, I now need to go back to my question screen and go to the reveal answers setup. And in here, I need to, on the for each loop, tell each one of these to reveal the answer. As you can see, I need to plug in the correct answer. That's what we set up on the function just now. So next I need to give it the correct answer. We can't get from the game mode because the game mode is on the server only and this needs to work for everyone. So for now, I'm just going to promote that to a little variable like so. And the correct answer is going to come from the reveal answers input here. So we're going to do correct answer, set that and plug it into the correct answer here. So now we've got this setup where I need to feed it to the correct answer from wherever I'm calling the reveal answers in. So if I just right click on this, find references with all, it'll find me all the ones that are calling reveal answers. And in here, we're looking at the player controller. So we go over to that. And this is telling everyone to reveal the answer based upon the answer here. But for that to know that, I need to have the correct answer plugged into here. So it's like a daisy chain of things. So the game mode or the server is going to call this client reveal answers to everyone. The reveal answer is going to go to the HUD and get the correct answer and send it over to our UI. So what we need to do is plug in our correct answer. That's the one we just added to our event. Add it to this function. Compile that there. Go back to the player controller, and there's the correct answer there. I want to feed that into the client reveal answers and get the correct answer that way. Now I just need to call the client reveal answers, and down here you'll see timer expired on the server. We're getting client reveal answers. Now we're on the server. We've backtracked our way back to the server, and I'm getting to get the game mode. And from there, I'm going to cast to GM quiz and get the correct answer. So I've worked my way back to figure out where to get the correct answer from and found, okay, now I'm back on the server. I can get the server's correct answer and feed it down the line. So that gets fed into this client's multicast. So everyone gets this answer sent through. There, everyone gets told on your HUD, update and reveal the answers. Go back to the widget, add it on and compare it in the answers section here. So let's take a look at that in action here. So hit play. And if I go to pick the answer there, you'll see them light up once the timer expires. Perfect. The last thing I want to do to the UI is indicate to the player when they've selected their object, their answer, sorry, object. So I'm going to go to the answer and we're going to find where we click on it. So on clicked there. And basically, I'm just doing the set color opacity thing again. We'll do that. And I'm going to set it to yellow. So when I choose an answer, it's going to highlight it for me and lock it in. So I'll go into here. I go the Egyptians. And it's lit it up, waiting for me to get the answer from the game. And then it will change all to green or red based upon whether I get it right. What's happening at the moment is our game mode is deciding when to ask a question. So let's take a look at the game mode. And the game mode here has ask a question where it's taking the current question index, which starts at 0, goes through that, sets up the answers, questions, and so on, and asks the question. That's telling the player controller to do that. The player controller is then starting a timer and then asking the question. When that timer expires, it's calling this timer expired. This is running on the server, remember? So here we have the game mode doing what we've done last time, which is revealing the answers correctly. So the thing I want to do here is I want to tell the game mode here to set up the next question. So on the game mode, we're going to do a function on here, and it's going to be called prepare next question. And in prepare next question, we're going to take the current question index and increment it. That means it's going to add 1 to it. I'm then going to set up a timer, and the timer will do for, let's say, 4 seconds. The event here, we're going to do create event. And this is then going to go ahead and ask the question again. So in the next question, the index is going to increase by 1, and then in 4 seconds time, it's going to ask the next question. And the next question index then would be get from the question pool, just fine, and rinse and repeat. Now, if the question index has reached the maximum amount of questions to ask, we want it to not do that and just end the round. So we're going to go ahead and have in the prepare next question, we're going to check to see if current question index here is greater than or equal to the maximum. So we're going to promote that to a variable and do maximum questions here. And in the round, essentially. Do that there. Sorry, that's going to false. There you go. So if we don't have, if we're not above the maximum questions, it will just keep going until it is. The maximum questions here, we'll just rename that and do questions around. There you go. Okay, so that will do questions per round. If it's say 5, it will then ask 5 questions, and then it'll hit the true here, which is basically to say end of round. So let's make a function for that and do end round. Then the end round is going to get called on the event graph. So when we ask a question, we want to check to see if the question index here is okay. In fact, actually, what we can do is we can just say to this thing not to do this check here. We'll take that out there and put it instead on the event graph. So at the start of the event, we do this check here for the current index. If it's not greater than or equal to, carry on. If it is, then we want to end the round. And the reason why I've done it here, rather than prepare next question, is because I need to check anyway on ask question whether or not I'm ending the round or asking another question. And I want to put end round on there, not here, because I want it to still wait on that last question there for 4 seconds before moving on to potentially the end of the round or asking the next question. So end round would happen, and then you probably want to show a screen to the players to say, hey, here you go. Now, one thing we've got to do, that you'll see on the event graph, when we're adding the questions here, we ask question, we need to remove the current question from the screen. So ask question comes through, we start a timer, ask question happens here, and we create the widget on the screen here. So before this happens, I need to remove the current question widget. So put a sequence right at the start here. And the current lot here is going to go on then 1. So it's going to do it second. The first thing it's going to do is take the current question widget, check if it's valid. And if it is valid, I want to remove it from parent. Okay, so that will remove the old one, put up the new one, and then go. Let's go back to my game mode. And I'm putting the questions per round set to 2. We've only got 2 questions. So now we've got to do is call our game modes prepare next question on our player controller when we do the reveal answers. So where's reveal answers? Happens in there. And we'll take to prepare the next question. And that's it. So let's test that out. I'm just going to make this do 2 new windows. Okay. We do Egyptians and Egyptians. There we go. And then in 4 seconds time, it will then transfer over to the next question. And let's get one wrong for now. Okay, there you go. So now we've got a couple of errors here. Let's have a look at this. So access known, trying to read property, get answer slot by index. So this is when we're doing this one. So this is saying this is not valid. And that's basically because it's getting to the end here, not finding the correct answer in that selection. So all I need to do is on that, where was it? Here is actually say, is this valid? In fact, I'll just do that. Yeah. Right at the start, actually. We can do it there. It's valid. Crack on. That should stop those errors from coming up here. Okay. Perfect. Now, what happens at the end of the round is totally up to you. You may want to bring up the current leaderboard. You may want to do multiple rounds. That's really depending on what kind of game you're making. But essentially, one of the things you may want to do here is just have multiple rounds. So if I go to variables here, we can do current round index, be an integer. And we just increment it. At the end round, maybe want to put like a scoreboard or something with a timer. I don't know, whatever you want to do. But the main thing is you want to indicate that you want to change the round here. And then we'll make another function here to start the round. So after a certain amount of time, we're going to do start round. And the round here is then going to get the next category and put it into here, or give the player a choice of category and put it into here. Whatever the case may be, we need to you need to come up with what you want it to do, and we just put it in here. So change category. If you're going to change category, you just change it to whatever you like. You can make that randomized if you want. Totally up to you. And then you go around to asking questions again. Just don't forget, when you do start round, you are setting the questions current question index here to 0. So when it sets it to 0, it resets it so it can count again. So that kind of brings us to the end of the quiz series. The part of what to do in between rounds is totally up to you. You may want to do something interesting or kooky or weird. But what I'd be interested to know is, what would you like to see? Is there anything else that you want to see added to this series or shown how to do if you're not too sure how to solve that problem? But I do like to leave a little bit of ambiguity at the end there so you can try and figure out for yourself what to do next. But just remember, if we set that back down to 0, choose a category. Again, that could be randomized. It could be like a UI put on the screen for the player to choose one. Whatever it may be, totally up to you. But I'd be interested to hear what you want to see added to this series in the future. So leave a comment below with what you want to see. If you like what I do and want to support the channel and the content I make, please consider subscribing to us on Patreon. Patreon will give you access to all our videos early from just $1 a month, and also access to project files and much more from $10 and higher. By all means, check it out. It's well worthwhile, and it massively helps us do this every day. So thank you so much for your support, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye, everyone.